look, his hand is going right through the pole, or the pole is going through
Alright,
his
so here
hand.
you've got this astrolier allegedly orbiting around the Earth in space, and he's holding on to this pole to brace himself, and of course the pole is going directly square through the palm of his hand. This is clearly a glitch in their CGI, whatever trickery they're using to fool people into thinking that they're actually up in space and weightless, unable to really fake how he's grabbing onto that pole. They just stick it right through his hand. Nobody'll notice. Just stick it right through his hand. I mean, give me a damn break here. In this video here, you can see Liarnauts clearly grabbing a hold of one another's harness wires in order to stabilize each other. I'll reverse that clip a bit so you can see that he's clearly not grabbing onto anything that's supposed to be there. He's grabbing onto something invisible, but you can tell that there is a reaction between the guy wearing the blue and the other guy's hand. Something's going on here, but we're not able to see it, either because of some sort of chroma key, CGI, green screening, something like that. But yet another instance of NASA fakery. Let's not forget this guy, clearly on wires, flying around in the background of the ISS. Should I say the LISS? I would say this here is pretty good evidence of NASA using some sort of CGI or virtual reality to fake their live stream stuff. In that clip, it really looks like the guy is supposed to be grabbing the hat, and for whatever reason the animators failed to complete the sequence, so he's sort of grabbing and placing nothing to the side. Okay, this clip really doesn't seem like much, but if you look a little deeper into it, it shows that they're using some sort of a technology beyond simple video editing. They're using a green screen. As you can see, she apparently grabs this item, this object that's supposed to be in the shot with her after she grabs it, and she plays around with it later on. But in order to get it to seem to appear like that, they would have either had to take uh, one shot of her without the little monster thing in the shot and have her moving around and talking, and then cut the tape, cut the camera, place the thing there in the shot, and then have her try to stand as still as possible between changing the scenery, and have her grab that object as fluidly as possible. Now, unless you got it perfect, cut it to exactly where she was standing before you placed the object into the scene, you would get like a chopping effect. It would you'd be missing some frames of the animation. But you don't get any of that there, and in fact, when she's going to grab the object, the motion is very fluid, and you can tell that they didn't stop the camera, place the object in the set, then start rolling the camera to get that effect. They're using something else, and
Yeah, it definitely appears like with this one and the one with the hat where he grabs onto nothing and places it to the side. It appears that they're using some sort of a virtual reality environment where they're manipulating fake objects. Like even the ball in her hand is probably not really there. The monster stuffed animal is probably not really there at all, which is why they're able to make it appear in the shot without switching takes. Like, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, let's say if you're filming me and I'm standing here moving around, and then if I want something to appear in the shot with with real low tech, I would have to stand perfectly still, then you put the object in the scene, then you roll the tape, and while I'm still standing perfectly still, have my motion be fluid to grab that object. So that's not what they're doing. That would be the only way that they could do it if they were really up there in space. It would be low tech. I mean, they're not up there supposedly with high technology video manipulation stuff. That's not what they're supposedly up there for. Virtual reality type video manipulation, CGI stuff. That's They shouldn't be doing that at all. But this little clip here proves that they're doing something of that ilk. So astronaut hand glitches, astronauts grabbing objects that don't exist and placing them to the side, and then stuffed animal objects appearing in the shot perfectly fluidly without any sort of cut and retake of the shot. So
The fact that she's able to move fluidly while the thing's appearing is a testament to that fact.
oh, and this will be the final astronaut glitch one that we look at because it's just a whopper. Peer, what's going on here? Danger, Will Robinson. I think they're going into a nebula. Maybe it's the Jack-o'-lantern nebula, right? So, what I'm going to do real quick for anybody that missed the beginning, I'm going to play this Galaxy of Horrors trailer again because, well, it's pretty funny. And you know what? I'd rather do it on YouTube because this website is just terrible. So let's put it on YouTube. This was released yesterday by NASA just in time for Halloween. So just going to set it up like that. Or is it Horrors? It's Horrors. Whoops. And again, not to confuse it with the Canadian movie Galaxy of Horrors, the same title that came out in 2017. This is brand new from NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, or Jack Parsons Laboratory, as you know, 1 day ago. So just in time for Halloween. And, you could read a little bit into what they're saying here, and it is a bit ominous. I mean, just listen to it. I won't interrupt this, but here we go. Very ominous stuff, even though it is a bit tongue-in-cheek.
The night sky, full of stars. For eons, human beings have gazed up at its tranquil beauty, taking solace in the peaceful stillness of this vast and eternal cosmic cornucopia. And yet, all the while, lurking beyond our solar system among the billions of stars and the exoplanets that orbit them, is another sort of Milky Way altogether. A far more sinister space. A place only sophisticated space telescopes and imaging processes can reveal. A place of unequaled terrors. Come with us now if you dare and discover the Galaxy of Horrors. Feel the rains of terror, the killer you never see coming. With winds of up to 5,400 miles per hour and torrential rains of glass blowing sideways. The weather here is deadly, and don't let its cobalt blue color fool you. This hazy, blowtorched atmosphere is riddled with silicate particles, making this an unearthly death trap no mortal would dare want to face. Or discover the zombie worlds that exist in this most inhospitable corner of the galaxy, the Poltergeist planet. One of 3 dead planets shambling through the twisted magnetic fields of their corpse star Lich, which is itself the collapsed core of an exploded star. But despite its demise, this undead star spins twin beams of radiation that could incinerate a spaceship foolish enough to venture too close. Even if you could make it to the surface, your nightmares would continue as the radiation from the zombie star rains down on planet Poltergeist, as well as her neighboring dead worlds of Draugr and Phobitor, creating sickly irradiated auroras to light up your certain death. These are just a sampling of the terrible, unwelcoming worlds that inhabit our Galaxy of Horrors.
So I wonder how much that cost to make, because you got to pay NASA employees way more than regular people, right? So what did that cost? $10 million to make that 2 minute long video, right? Another thing I wanted to touch on real quick is the pictures of Earth from space and how they change over time, because globetards like Lyman Dan love to use pictures from NASA of the Earth from space as proof that the Earth has curvature. And yet, when you see images, if I can possibly find it again, when you see images like, let's see, where, here it is, right here. Images like this, and again, I wished I knew how to make this bigger. Like, if I click on it again, does it go bigger or what? No, of course not. Oh, come on, slow-ass website. Yeah, let's just let it load for a minute. And if I can't get it, I'd like to get it big enough to where you can see it, but I'm sure most of you guys have already seen this image. But basically what you've got is from 1972, the image of the Earth or the continents change over time, change size. So like this one here, you've got America, like there's Florida, there's like Texas right here, Gulf of Mexico right there. The United States is taking up, well, I don't know what, about a third, a little bit less than a third of the entire globe. Now on this image here, the United States is taking up like what, maybe a tenth or a 15th of the entire this side of the globe. So, like, we're actually expected to believe that the continental landmass of the United States morphs in size over the course of 1997 to 2012. So that's what we're expected to believe, right? My goodness. So, anybody like Lyman Dan, or anybody that tells you that pictures of the Earth from space prove that the Earth is a globe, just show them this, man, because it shows that these are, first of all, even NASA admits they're all composites. However, they do claim that the first one from 1972, they claim that that was a real image. However, if if they could take real pictures of the Earth from space in 1972, then why do they have to make CGI composites in 2015? Right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Technology does not work that way. Technology does not regress. It always, it at least stays the same and only can possibly get better. Technology doesn't just entropy, right? So that's about all that I had to cover today. I do want to check in on the comments, but I will say real quick that this video here is brought to you by Mario Kart Tour. I don't know if you guys know, but Mario Kart Tour is out there on iPhone or Android phones. It's free and it's an awesome game. They're not paying me to say this. I just need some more people to friend me on there so I can get some rubies. But if you've ever liked Mario Kart, man, Mario Kart Tour is free on Google Play Store and stuff. I definitely recommend checking out. It's the most awesome game I've played on a phone ever. So let me check in on the comments real quick, and I will just mention real fast that if you'd like to support this channel, it would be greatly appreciated, and you can do so through PayPal or Patreon, and I'll put links in the description.
For themselves, not take my word for it. I can't prove to you God's real. All I can do is share what I know, what I've experienced. But what I've experienced, and if you haven't experienced what I have, how are you going to know? I tell people it's like, telling a blind man the color of the rainbow. You're not going to get that through their head. They can't comprehend that. I mean, unless they had sight at one time. But if they were born blind, they would never understand the colors of a rainbow. And so somebody that has not had an experience with God is not going to understand how that all works unless they have that experience. And you can get that experience. You can have it. You just have to seek it. That's the whole point. But God deals with each individual in different ways.
Hello. This is Rose Nyland. What?
That was
I'm one of the winners of the Publishers Clearinghouse. Ed McMahon wants to see me right away.
Wait a minute. I have to apologize. I thought this was the Joe Franklin studio. I'll tell you why I'm here. I happen to be in town over doing some stuff for the NBC affiliate.
That's right.
And, Ed McMahon, our good friend, could not be here. Yeah. But it seems, David, that you are the $1 million winner.
Oh, my God. I've won $1 million.
Shout out to my people. This is Ed McMahon, rolling slow through the suburbs in an unmarked van. I ran the strip
And all right, everyone. Welcome back to Dose of Reality. Just let me know that you can see me and hear me. I'm assuming you can because we do check these sort of things. Um, Today, for those that aren't familiar, this is the My Awakening series. This is episode 31, where I come out and I interview various researchers in the different communities, and I get their personal story, their journey, their view on the topics that they went through. It's not about debating people point by point or if I agree or not. It's about pretty much going from the beginning to now, how it's affected them, how it's affected others around them. And with all that being said, today my guest is Photo Helix. Photo Helix, thank you for being on.
How you doing, sir? Thank you for asking me and having me on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just going to start at the beginning. And I know you've been on a big spiritual journey probably for a long time as well. So what I usually ask people, I start people off is, when did they first realize, because I don't like the word awake. We're all on this journey still. We're all awakening. Nobody is awake, in my opinion. But there is that kind of pivotal point for people. Like for me, it was when I first questioned 9/11, like what that exact piece of footage was that I saw to question it, and then where that brought me. For a lot of people, it's an event. It's something to do with the news or the media, or maybe it was a spiritual thing first. If that's where you want to start. But I usually ask people when did they stop trusting the government and the media and why, and stop researching things. So
Right.
if you can kind of tell us where you started your journey.
I guess okay. Start the journey would be uh, back when I was younger. My parents sort of were. They weren't necessarily anti-government. I was just like everybody else, as far as growing up in school and things like that. But I experienced some things when I was young uh, that put me on I guess, more of a spiritual journey throughout my life. But I had an experience when I was 8 years old, and we weren't like Christian folks at the time. I mean, to be a Christian, you could eat with a fork. You were considered a Christian, I guess, civilized. But when I was 8, we lived at a place in Ohio on the east side. It was in Columbus, 2999 Renfro Road. Never forget that. And I was out with some friends, and we were out there just playing. And I was waiting on the neighbor girl and her little brother to come out. They got called in for lunch, and me and a boy named Doug was laying out on the corner of their driveway, and I had a vision, man, and and I seen this. Everything just went black. Was looking at the clouds were popcorn clouds, blue skies and everything just went totally black. It was like if you just closed your eyes completely real hard and held it shut. And in the very center of it, again, we're just laying there. We were looking at the clouds and picking out animals and what we'd seen and stuff like that. And I seen Christ standing there with a lamb in one arm and a little staff thing, and uh, I knew who it was, but it wasn't something that I mean, we weren't really being taught that or nothing. I didn't have a Bible or nothing. We had a family Bible, I think, under the table, but it was just a dust collector. And after that, I asked the kid. I said, "Did you see that?" And and there was this voice that came out and said, He doesn't see. He doesn't know anything." And I realized because he said about the same time he said, "See what?" And I said, "Never mind." So I jumped up and run home, and that's where I got my first Bible. After that, my mom and them, I was beside myself. I wanted a Bible, so they got me this King James Version Bible. It was a little brown Bible, and like you'd see maybe in a church or something where people carry the smaller youth type Bible, and that's where I started as far as studying. Shortly after that, not too long after, Dad had an accident at his work, and we ended up having to move, and we moved from the house to apartments, and he was flat of his back, had some different experiences there, surgery and all, and we went in the middle of a blizzard. My mom had heard a voice from God. I won't get into all that necessarily, but we went to this church. She was ill of asthma. This was a woman who I remember I was taking her to the hospital with her fingernails and lips were blue, because of lack of oxygen. I mean, we carried oxygen actually. And she was healed of asthma and started singing and stuff like that. It was pretty amazing. But at 8 years old, I was seeing all these things, and so it was a real brain boggle. And then after that, Dad, he had a visitation from an angel, and while we were gone during that blizzard stuff, there's just so many different little things that, from a kid's perspective, you're thinking, okay, to hear it from an adult would be a total wipeout. People say, oh, yeah, they're lying or whatever. It's just crazy. But this was stuff that molded my life and gave me the reason or a belief in God, that I knew that there was something bigger all my life. Even though I later, went in the military and did all this stuff, I walked the wild path and all these things and lived a life just really that was me. But I always knew there was a God. And there was no, denying that part. So then later in life, I ended up going into the ministry. I had given my heart to God. Trying to, after I got out of the military, I was trying to get myself straightened back out because I was into drinking and drugging and partying and women and the whole works. It was a lifestyle, and got into that, man. And then because of some experiences I had that were again on the supernatural level, things that man couldn't do or comprehend probably, but that really put me back in touch with God. And so at that point, I really began studying on a full fledged. Well, during all that time, believe it or not, we were always looking at what was going on behind the scenes on the bigger scale. I was taught to not believe.
Besides just in religious things.
Government, yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of probably started to see their anti-God agenda. Is that what?
Yeah, when I was young, because of the environment that I was brought up in, and because of the people that we met throughout the East Coast, I was introduced to a lot of different belief ideas and a lot of different concepts, especially when it come to how people believed in the politics. You had Democrats and Republicans and things like that. And I was just never one to buy into a lot of the jargon. I mean, yeah, you were your regular American hoo-hoo and that kind of thing. But we were always, or I was always taught that you don't believe anything that anybody says, and not to trust anybody, but trust God, and not to fear anybody, but fear God. So I grew up with a strange aspect of trust and fear. I mean, you would develop trust by being friends with somebody until they lied to you. Lying was evil, man. You just didn't lie. And so sometimes the truth would make it harder, You would tell people something, but if there wasn't a proof aspect to it, you really had to question. And because I believed the prophecies and the truth of the scriptures, because of what I had experienced, not because what it said or because of what people said, but because of the experiences I had had, it was just me and God one-on-one kind of thing. Those were the things that made him real to me. And so I began this kind of concept of process of elimination, as it were. And that included everything from what somebody in a political aspect would tell you to some preacher in a pulpit would tell you. And because of the studies that I really devoted to and grasped, I didn't believe half of the things I was hearing from anybody. And I would question, how is it that God, when Christ supposedly is coming back and that sky is ripped open or torn open, I mean, going by what it says in the scriptures, how is it that every eye is going to see him? I questioned those things because people were saying, okay, we're here and China's over here, but when he comes back, everybody's going to see him. And I'm like, okay, how is that? How will everybody see him exactly? Is it just going to open all the way around? And that my mind as a child couldn't comprehend how that would work.
Yeah.
But I knew he was real. And so I had to believe what he was and who he was rather than what man was saying. And so I would find my dad got a Strong's Concordance back when I was little. I was probably about 15. I started really digging into a concordance. And that gives you every word that's written. So you can read the original language, Hebrew or Chaldean or Greek or Aramaic, whatever it was written in, and you could get a different meaning from those words because you understood what they were originally. Not, it's like you and me. If we're here and I write you a letter, say you're German and I'm French, and I write you a letter in Spanish, there's going to be a lot of misunderstandings in that. And so by the time you get it, if you write it and recopy it and write it in English and send it off to somebody over in China, by the time they can read it, it goes through so many different languages and translations, transliterations, and all that, and interpretations even added. So I was one of those people who wanted to prove everything or disprove it. I was just that kind of person. I didn't believe anything you told me unless you could prove it. I had to have proof. And I think that's why God made me or let me see the things he did.
That's good. That's good. Everybody should have that.
I think so. I think nobody should believe anything that they're told or what they see with their own eyes sometimes, because even the eyes will lie to you, especially with photographs and things like that. You can stage
photographs on reality, man. Photographs are not reality.
No. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and whoever said that knows what they were talking about. And that's why Hollywood made it so big. It's a programming powerhouse.
Well, it's total program. I mean, you were just talking about, you were showing the spinning ball there. I mean, look at all the pictures from space. They're all completely fake, but people believe it because they think photographs prove reality.
Well, and that's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I'll even go one more. I would be more likely to believe a photograph. The problem is we don't have any of those. We have CGI now because of this modern technology. We can create pictures. I can do a painting. I'm an artist. I can paint a painting, literally, of the blue marble, they call it, that looks as real, if not more so, than a CGI picture that a computer generates. And the problem is we still don't have an actual flat footage picture. We don't have, I mean, when I say flat, I'm not talking about flat versus round. I'm talking about just a straight out, flat out kind of photograph. Because the things that they showed us, I was always skeptical of the NASA moon landing because of what the scripture said about a firmament and all of those things and how those were hung there. And I thought, well, maybe God did hang it there, because you still get these programming from schools. And thought, well, okay, so maybe if the earth is his footstool, which is what scripture says, if the earth is God's footstool, where he's looking at it, where it's like grasshoppers, like we're like, it's an ant farm, so to speak. But if that's the case, then is it just a round ball that sits in front of him and floats around? Is he holding it that way? And you always see those pictures where they show God or Christ or something holding his earth that's just sort of spinning in his hand or whatnot. And there's just so many things that just didn't make sense to me. And when you can't see physical evidence and photographs and things. And so I started looking at, I don't know, I just looked at life as a real skeptical kind of person. And I there were discrepancies in the King James Version because of the language that was used. There was discrepancies in the school system, the stuff they would teach you. There was discrepancies in the moon landing because the moon was too small, or the Earth in the background supposedly was too big. They got these pictures they supposedly got on the lunar surface, and in the background you can see the moon is the same size as it is if you were on the Earth, and it's like that's so fake. And you can tell. It's
insulting. It's so fake that it's insulting.
It is.
It really is insulting. I mean, when you look at that stuff, I mean, the lunar lander looks like ripped construction paper, aluminum foil, curtain rods, and Scotch tape. Like literally, like you could have went to Walmart for $20 and built that thing.
That's the thing. And if you look into like how they're doing these new cameras and things, once you get to the technological explosion, if you will, because in the 80s, it was just not something that we really even thought about. It wasn't a thing to focus on. I had heard about flat earth and hollow earth, and you couldn't read comic books without hearing about those concepts when I was a kid. And so I had that idea about these things, but just had no proof of anything. It wasn't something I went after. And my point was to either prove something right or prove something wrong. And again, process of elimination. And then there was this thing that came out, and I had seen it back when I was in high school. The first time I'd heard about it on Popular Mechanics. There was a magazine that had come out in Popular Mechanics, and there was another magazine that I'd heard about it in and did the research on it. But as I was coming into the military is when I really got into doing the digging on it, we'll say. But there's a guy called Papard or oh my goodness, they named the Star Trek captain after him on a video or on TV shows. Picard, thank you, not Papard. I'm thinking of Grey Poupon mustard. Yeah, Picard. He was an adventurer and explorer.
August Picard.
That's him, and he was the first person to reach the super height that he did.
Stratosphere,
and
like a weather balloon.
Says he hit the firmament, because when they even showed recently, they've showed a video of a remake of that, science, and they hit the water, but which is interesting because right after he had went up, I'll tell you that part first, but he goes all the way up, man. Now this was in Popular Mechanics. We didn't have NASA. There wasn't people launching rockets to space. We hadn't come to that point. This was way back. And this guy had this metal ball. It was sealed up like a submarine would be. And later after this thing, his studies went to submarines, and his son became popular for that. But Picard went up there with this big hot air balloon and was going to see how high he could go, and went way, way up. Forget what the actual final was. And it busted out. It came back with parachutes as it came down, but he said in his recording that as it went up, because they had one window that he could look out, and he watched the window as it went up, and he said the whole thing just had a blue glow to it all the way around. And he says as he got way up there, right before they had hit the top or wherever it was they hit, he said it looked as if the Earth were an upturned plate. Like you were looking at an upturned plate, like it had edges that came up.
It looked as if Earth was a flat disc with an upturned edge.
Yeah, with an upturned edge. Yeah, and that's where that study and that research was shut down. Now that was posted in your Popular Mechanics, and people at the day, it was the first proof people had of the environment that we live in, and it was buried for the most part. You can still find that, and it's worth a ton or a mint to get the actual book or those copies of those magazines. But sure enough, it was a really big event. And shortly after that, we had the NASA program with the whole Antarctic move with Admiral Byrd and all that came out. But they
once he spent 30 years down in Antarctica. And he finally found something, and all of a sudden he came back, and then they set up NASA, and they sealed off all the edges and whatever up top.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. But see, let me throw this at you too, and then I guess we'll get into that effect thing and how that came to be. When I was a kid, the scripture was a big player in my life. Okay, as I'm growing up, and again, with the experiences I've had and being, as you get older, you try to rationalize and make everything fit and figure out and understand. And I hadn't seen contradictions in scripture, even though we can see some of those now, but I never did when I was studying before. And the only things I would see was maybe mistranslations of certain words that were used, and you could understand by whichever the author was, like if it was King James and that grouping. But one of the things that when I was talking about where understanding the earth and trying to figure out when he came back, how everybody was going to be able to see him.
If they're underneath the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where I started coming to the conclusion that everything was going to have an earthquake. Because it says all the islands shall be moved out of their places. When we
So
come,
you were still taking the ball for granted, and you were
Yeah.
reaching for all these cataclysmic things that would have to happen in order for everybody to see him return.
exactly, yeah, and that was the thing, because of knowing it round or believing it to be round. In that concept, you have to have an understanding of how Scripture is going to be able to move all of the islands out of their places. And so my idea was that, okay, what'll probably happen is everything's going to shift and go back to the one continent, the Tataria kind of thing. And interestingly enough, with the effects, that's exactly sort of what we're seeing happen with all the islands being moved out of their places. We're moving back. Australia's moving up, and South America moving over. And these are the things that people in the community would understand that right off the bat because of the way the geological changes have taken place. But this is still prophecy being fulfilled. These things happening right before our eyes in some ways, and the majority being blind. That was another one of the prophecy parts. And so anyway, I pictured in my mind that the islands would be just all moved out and moved together so that they would be in that one central spot where when he came back, that everybody would see that way. And interestingly enough, if you look on a globe now, used to, you could see land from any angle of the globe. But now, if you look on your globes, there's one particular part, the way it can turn, that it's all water. So everything already has shifted literally to one side, which is an amazing thing in itself. The fact that maps and globes and whatever way we track it has moved in such a way. All the islands moved out of their places, which leads more confidence in what the prophecies spoke of, because that's exactly what has taken place, that the islands moved out of their places. But if the earth, it says in Scripture that the earth is immovable. And
Immovable, fixed and immovable. The earth has no curves. I mean,
that's right.
There's all sorts of. Some people say there's up to 200 passages that kind of relate to that, and I've read through most of them, and none of them actually say the word flat Earth, but they all say
they say
absolute things that contradict the globe.
They don't say round in the sense that it's a ball either. It doesn't say a ball or anything. It does say round as in a circular.
Sitting upon the circle of the earth is not mean it's a ball.
But it also says four corners too, see? Mm-hmm. So those are things you have to consider. Again, and this is something too that I point out to people. I don't think that the first video I ever made about round versus flat kind of concept, and threw in the hollow as well, was that to me personally, I didn't see how it would matter. Now, again, understand this: before I actually come to the true understanding that I believe in now, I've seen the effects first, the Mandela effect and the quantum effect. So before I go into that complete understanding, I guess, of where the platform is that we're on, or realm even, then I would have to say, we'd have to discuss how I come to the Mandela effect, I suppose. But just prior to the videos of the effects, I did a flat realm because it was a big thing at the time in the YouTube land. And my point was this: one, anything that you say that is opposing to the normal belief system, such as flat versus round. And I said this way back in the earlier part of this explosion of understanding of flat and round. I told people then that you watch, because the people that are saying it's flat, that this is going to become a government thing. There's a reason that this information is now coming to the top, as it were. And when we say stuff coming to the top, we talk about like when you're making cream or milk, the stuff floats to the top, the impurities come out, and everything comes clean. And so as this comes out and stuff, I made a point that, first of all, it doesn't matter if it's flat or if it's round or if it's a triangle or a square. It doesn't, the shape, it could be hollow, whatever you believe, doesn't matter when your breath leaves your body. Now, we just had a death in the community. Jerry Rourke passed away the day before yesterday. and I did a video about that. Reaching out to people for and announcing for his family because they need some help. And he was a good friend of mine. But him and I would talk many times, and I've said it many times that our breath, we're not guaranteed our breath. That that next breath or heartbeat, we could die at any moment. And sure enough, in saying that, understanding that we could go, it was my point that it doesn't matter what the shape is that you're on. It matters where you stand with God
Yeah.
when it's all done and said. And so that video went over decent enough, but the final point to it was that you mark my words, this is going to make anybody speaking against the round earth a government target. Now, I said this way back before anybody knew that flat earth and round earth was a threat of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
And that video's still up, flat versus round or something like that. And does it really matter, right? But I did make the point that if you're speaking things that the government's against, like NASA is sort of a government pushed kind of thing, and the round is a school induced public thing. And so anything against that is going to receive harsh criticism from the right or the left or whatever it is that those people are on the extreme side. So here's the thing, though. Sure enough, now the federal government, the FBI, has posted a literal readout, especially to YouTube and Google and Facebook and places like that, that people who are speaking about flat Earth are to be considered as a dangerous, possible domestic terrorist threat.
Yeah, and did you see what they did the other night? I know you probably didn't because it just happened on Saturday Night Live this past Saturday. They did a skit where a so-called crazy person in the crowd rushed at Trump with a handgun, screaming they were a flat earther. So, but this information's been building up for the last several years now. It's getting bad and bad and bad, trying to make us look like we're batshit crazy. But I think that you would probably also, would you agree like I do, because you were already on a spiritual journey and knew that God was real before all this, correct?
Right.
But somebody like me didn't, and me coming through that and then wanting to know why these people are lying and then seeing that they're hiding God, then for a lot of people, it is very important.
Exactly. Because I was looking at it from that perspective of already knowing, because I mean, I'm that kind of thing that I see it as everybody should do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, brother.
No, it's all right.
Anyway, when you see it from my perspective, or at least when I was seeing it from my perspective, assuming that everyone believed there's a God, some naivety to it, I guess I was that way. Just assuming everybody knew what I knew for the most part. Mm-hmm. And as you grow and you find out that's not so much the truth, and being military and all that, you find out a lot of different belief systems in the world. And so I came to grasp that not everybody could grab it or understand it. But the idea that the government would use these things and it be a danger to them just made more concrete that it was probably we were onto something.
Yeah, and I use verbiage similar to you. You sounded a lot like me when you said, "I don't care if it's flat, round, triangle." I say the same thing, but the thing is, the fact that they're lying to you about it, you can't accept these lies, and they're lying to you about your cosmology, how we got here, where we are, if we're special. They're lying about all that, and all that is tied into this lie. So I try to get everybody started on that journey. I don't want anybody to come away from watching my shows and say, I'm a Mandela effectee, I'm a flat earther, I'm a 9/11 no planer. I don't even like labels. I think the labels hold us all down, and unfortunately, they box a lot of people into certain beliefs.
They do. And that's the thing. I try and tell people, don't take my word for nothing. A lot of the videos I did, all the videos I did, probably were just to make people think for themselves, to try and go out there and find out, to prove God's real for themselves. Not take my word for it. I can't prove to you God's real. All I can do is share what I know, what I've experienced. But what I've experienced, and you, if you haven't experienced what I have, how are you going to know? I tell people it's like, telling a blind man the color of the rainbow. You're not going to get that through their head. They can't comprehend that. I mean, unless they had sight at one time. But if they were born blind, they would never understand the colors of a rainbow. And so somebody that has not had an experience with God's not going to understand how that all works unless they have that experience. And you can get that experience. You can have it. You just have to seek it. That's the whole point. But God deals with each individual in different ways. And the governments of the world, and I mean all of them. You look at Antarctica Treaty and the CERN treaties and things like that, where we have all these major players in the government, even though in the front face they're in war, behind the scenes they're really working in hand, and their ultimate,
yeah. No, people think that we're at beef with Russia and stuff. They got people living in the same space stations and everything.
right. That's funny. That right there is just a big quinky dink, isn't it? Yeah. We're Russia, but we're going to the Russian space station.
Yeah, you mentioned the Antarctic Treaty. I don't think people realize how massive that is. To look, there's over 50 nations.
Oh, it's big. It's big.
On sealing it off. Yeah. And these are all people that at different stages. You all hear about them at wars with each other and all this, but they all agree not to step on their treaty that's gone back since 1958 in Antarctica. What are they hiding?
That's right. And here's the thing: if you go down there, if you set sail to go down there on your own, you're dead. They're going to, you will be sunk, literally shot down and sunk after they may capture you first, but it depends on your vessel and how many crew you got.
And they limit what you can bring for fuel, and you can't even go basically past the 65th parallel. They're going to turn you around. But hey, no big deal. Nothing to hide here. But hey, before we even get into the Mandela stuff, while we're still on this, what do you think about the North Pole in relation to a lot of old stories of Eden being there, Shambhala, Mount Meru, all this type of stuff? You have any opinions on any of that?
Well, the biggest thing, I know you don't want to go into the effect just yet, but the North Pole, that was what was always taught about Santa Claus, right? I was taught this will show you my background. I was taught because lies were such an important point that there was no Santa Claus. I was taught the truth from the beginning, that my gifts come from my mother and my dad. So I never believed in Santa Claus ever. And they've always tried to teach me even the hardest core truth about life. And so when looking into some of these things, again, thinking that the ball was what it was, the North Pole just was a place of, you had Greenland up there, because there was a conglomerate of all these different places that were cold. Greenland was cold and white, and Iceland was the green. And they named that, supposedly the story was that I understood, was because the pirates or whoever it was, how you sort of stereotype, but the pirates had named where they buried their treasures. They called Greenland Iceland because they didn't want the people to come there. And but then when you start looking at North Pole and you look at the different things, I had an uncle, so I guess this gives credence to, who did, he was on a submarine. It was called a nuclear submarine, and it was the first kind or the first of its kind. And they did 6 months under the Arctic ice of North Pole and northern ice. That was one of their big things. They stayed under that. And because of having access to that information, I just believe that the North Pole was just what they would tell us it was, the big ice sheet that was frozen over and stuff. And the deeper you go into being programmed or believing the things that they tell you, you start to assume that it works. And the math doesn't work. That's the biggest kick for me. But this submarine my uncle was on, they stayed under this ice. So what actual continent? I was told the North Pole. So I don't know specifically what part or what region they were in. But if you look at it now, versus prior to the changes being a reality. There really was a cold region up there. It was an icy region. But sometimes you have to wonder, um, if you were to lay it all out flat, is that a same part of the ice that we see in the what they call the North and the South poles? Is that the same ice? Does that make sense? That it maybe is a big ring kind of thing. That part of what we would see in the northern part that was photographed, because how far do they go into that deep center? They say you can go right to it up there. So I don't know, but you never see really many expeditions too deep into that region. And why? I don't know. I just the whole point of North Pole being Santa Claus, that was sort of the big thing that's taught to the kids. It's part of what helps to teach the ball theory. People don't realize that Santa Claus teaches ball. And so if you're going to believe one lie, you might as well believe a bunch of lies.
Santa, aka Satan, teaches ball.
Yeah, right.
Ball.
Big Could it be Satan? What was that? Right.
Yeah, the church lady. Could it be Satan?
Yeah, right. That's so funny. But I don't know, man. I just I was always one of those people that was just really against people saying something that wasn't true, or knowing the truth about something, and hearing people talk out of the side of their mouth, or try and scam people. I couldn't stand a liar. If you lied to me, I had an issue with it.
That's one of the reasons we do what we do, right? Besides that, we know it's what we need to do. It's the right thing to do. What sparked a lot of us was we can't stand being lied to. I mean, that's what it was for me. When did you start your YouTube channel? So we're going to get into the effect soon. But is that why you started a YouTube channel, for the effect? Or did you get on YouTube and talk about other things? And what were those things?
Yeah, I the first thing I did, I had a YouTube channel. I want to say it was 2007, I believe. I believe it was 2007 when I came on, because prior to that I didn't know anything about YouTube, and I was doing photography at the time, and that was sort of my line of work as a photographer. I was an artist, so I was doing different things. I've always been in construction and design and all that kind of junk. Anything that was creative, I was involved in it somehow. And so anyway, because I'd had some movie business kind of stuff going on with different videos and things, that sort of opened the door for me with the YouTube thing. But how it happened was I had a dream. And when I was in the military, oh man, made me think of Jerry Runk. I haven't shared this with a whole lot of people, okay? Jerry, the one that just passed away, he would call me Dreamer. He'd say, "Hey, Leo, what's up, Dreamer?" And that came from me sharing this story with him, and it stuck with him. That's amazing. How about that? When I was in the military, I was the RPO, which is Religious Petty Officer during boot camp, and how all these things fell into place. Just amazing, really. But I used to have dreams, and I would tell people who would ask me what I dreamed, because I would tell people things that were going to happen in that day, or the day before, or rather the day after and stuff, because I would have a dream, and my dreams were really accurate. And if they were a specific person that was in the dream, I could tell them what I dreamed, and they would watch it come to play. And some people considered it a witchcraft thing, and it wasn't witchy or nothing. I wasn't into that. That wasn't what it was happening. It was God-given dreams.
Listen, all these potentials, all these powers that we're unlocking, and the potential we're tapping into, they want you to think it's witchcraft, new agey, all this shit.
Oh yeah, because it keeps you away from it. It keeps you
away from the spiritual side. It's all gatekeeping our spirituality, man.
That's right. Now don't get me wrong, there is some witchcraft. I mean, that stuff's real too. But my point being is that I was just having dreams, man, and it got to where it was such a regular thing that once I was on board the ship, we had what we called the chicken coop. It was like 6 coffin racks on one side and 6 on there. So you had 6 men in one little small space for sleeping only. And you had your racks, and you had they opened up. They're called coffin racks because that's where your locker was inside of. It's just a thin mat. As a matter of fact, more confined probably than a prison cell in each chicken coop, and it was under the flight deck of the aircraft carrier. It was called the coop, and we that worked up there on the deck, that's where we slept. So I had the bottom one on the rack, and I would wake up and people would be standing there looking at me and going, "What'd you dream, dreamer?" Because they were curious about what I would dream, and I would just tell them, what my dreams are. Sometimes it was just a nonchalant kind of thing that we didn't. Oh, that's sort of strange, and then it would come to pass, and it was like everybody jaws drop. So and so. Man, I had a dream that so and so left, and somebody died. Things like that. I mean, really serious things. Or I would have a dream that one of the guys that everybody thought was funny, that he found a wife, and sure enough, things like that. I mean, things that were just out of the ordinary. That was more of a joke kind of thing, and but because it would happen. And little things. Sometimes it would be just really weird things, and it got to be such a regular thing that people would just ask me. And so I had shared that with Jerry Runk, and he was calling me Dreamer. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah. So while I was in there, that's how I came to be that way about telling dreams. So over a period of time, a lot of dreams I would have, I kept to myself because they seemed prophetic in nature. Some of them really scary about things that I would watch unfold. And I've literally had dreams and watch them unfold in ways and I keep most of that to myself. Scripture says not to cast your pearl before swine. And it's not to say people are a bunch of pigs, but ultimately people can't appreciate those gifts of the Spirit, I think. So jump ahead, 2007. I had lost my dad. He'd passed away, and in 2004. And so I was still dealing with that because he was a best friend thing. I went through a lot of different issues. In 2007, trying to get your life back together, and you're trying to do things, and just normal issues of life, I guess, for everybody has their own. And I had a major dream, and I hadn't had one in a while, and it was really scary. And in that dream, though, there was a vision of this angelic that came talk to me. And I'd had those things happen before and always had been true and always come true. But in this particular one, it said, tell them and tell them. And so I'm looking out, and in the dream, and it's the video dream, the dream is still up, and it's just called Prophetic Dream. So I left it up there because I don't know how that's going to play out. But I still believe that's going to be a reality. Honestly, I do. And there's certain parts of it that I had done another follow-up video to it, but I went ahead and took it back down. But it was because it gave some details that are left out of the original. This is my first YouTube video, the very first YouTube video I did. And I think it was like 10 minutes long because you can only do 10 minutes at the beginning, So it was a short video, and I tried to cram as much into it as I could to explain the dream. And it was real fresh in my mind. And that's how I came to the YouTube. But in part of the dream, toward the end there, this angel comes to me, and I'm looking at a movie theater. I'm literally in a movie theater, and the big screen up there, and people are just coming in and sitting down in the thing. You know how you if you go to a movie where people are just coming in, lights are still up, and people's trying to find their seats with popcorn and stuff. The old fashioned, not these big fancy, recliner seats, but I mean just the regular red seats of a theater. And people are just shuffling in and out. And I'm at the back of the theater, and this angel comes to me, and he says, and points sort of toward the front of the screen there and says, tell them. And so I'm supposed to tell them all the stuff that just went down. And I'm, my question is, who are they? Who am I telling? And the idea of being in a movie theater, what is this? Am I supposed to make a movie about this? And so sure enough, in pondering that, I stumbled across YouTube. It's the craziest thing, how that all happened, which was confirmation to make this video. So I went out there and realized I can tell them, I can show them. And so I went and made the video, and I tried to cram it in to tell about this dream, which I believe is prophetic. I believe it's still going to happen. I believe it's coming. I really do. And that was my first YouTube video. And that's how it started. I didn't know anything about flat Earth. Was not an issue at this point. Again, that wasn't even a topic in my mind. Furthest thing from my brain.
So what other I mean, after making these dream videos, well, first I want to know how the response was from people, but then after that, you must have went down you must have went down like the 9/11 rabbit hole or some of these other big topics, chemtrails. So go ahead, you continue, but let's hit them all. I need to fill my coffee. You want to give me 1 second? We don't have to take a break. I just
go ahead.
All
right, well, go fill your coffee, and I'll just tell about how I went down that rabbit hole. Or do you want me to wait for you so you don't?
How about this? Musicians for Truth has been telling me for a month or two he was going to make a Mandela Effect song, and it's really awesome. And he made it. It's only 3 minutes long, so I'll just play that song while I fill the coffee.
There you go. Well, do that, and I'll fill mine too. Does that work? Yeah. All right, play the music. Key the music.
What do you do when you say you're wrong? Any man with a big jack in his hand. Yeah, oh no, oh. Why do we see the Tin Man with a pipe wrench in his hand? Yeah, oh no. What do you do when you say you're wrong? That your mind is gone. What do you think when you change your song? Hold your breath. Hold your breath. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Why? Your recollections not in line, things are changing overnight. Yeah, oh no, no, no. Why did the braces fade away, but the memory remains? Yeah, oh no. What do you do when they say you're wrong? When the proof is gone, what do you think when they change this song? Hold your breath. Hold your breath. Hold your breath. Trust yourself.
All right, everyone, and I'll grab the link for you guys real quick for his video on his channel. And this is actually it right here. I did mirror it as well on the Real News Online, and I'll put it up on mine later. How's my audio? Am I coming in low, guys? Let me know, and if I have to, I'll switch it back again. Give me 1 second here.
Sound good over here.
Yeah, I know I sounded good to you last time, and yeah, me too. Hang on. Let me just. I'm gonna put my mic back the way I had it. Hang on. Stop the screen share. Microphone. Just a little audio issue today. I don't know what's up with that. All right. I put it back. We should be good. Just if I play a sound clip, somebody remind me. Okay, Godo, we were at the point where you made your first YouTube video.
Started YouTube, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so check this out. I'll rip through that. So in the midst of doing this, after I did that video, I had some pretty good feedback. And so I thought, well, you know, this is a platform where I can reach people, because at this point I had turned my life back over to God, and was trying to come out of the kind of debauchery and the kind of sin in my life and things that I was doing, because I was really about me. And even though I was always about reaching people, but this dream really affected me. And it was time, you know, that I understood that this was time now to do a new thing. So the one thing that I was about was truthing, being a truther. And so I went into discussing some things. And because of me being ex-military and having certain access to certain individuals and certain information, I was about exposing what was really happening and telling people that, you know, you better make sure you're right with God. That was the big thing. And so I went about it doing it in comedic ways, but which brung an audience because I was doing humor.
Humor is a great icebreaker, and it's a fantastic way to plant seeds.
And that was the whole point. I wasn't trying to shovel anything. I wasn't trying to preach hard or anything. I was just trying to share people information and do it in a funny way so that it was accepted. People would get, you know, at one point I did this thing called the Survivor Hunter. That was the name of it. And I talked like this. It was a guy that talked like this all the time, and he was like an Australian outback or something, you know, and he was a Cogney or whatever. And
that just does not sound right coming out of your fucking mouth.
I know it, right? It's crazy, man. And so I would do that. And then this was, you know, I would say, no matter what you do, if you're going to hang out with me in the outback or in the brush or something, you know, you better make sure you're right with God. You know what I mean? You know. And, so that was it, you know. And
oh my God,
I would tell people that. So it was a humorous thing, and people liked it. And sure enough, man, that was the way I was doing that bit. It was almost like there was a show called Green Tomatoes or Green Tape or they used duct tape on everything, and that was the idea. And I would do things to show people how to survive. And what not to do, because I was using that character to show things that were just really ignorant. I would climb up a tree so that you could see distance. I would show people how to find your location in the woods or where you were at so you'd know which way to go and things like that. But in that process, I would fall out of the tree, of course. And then I'd say, hey, you don't want to do that, you know. And I would teach them about certain weaponry or how to get lights or how to make a fire and things like that in worst case scenario. So people had survival techniques, because the majority of America can't grow a tomato. And it was in that realm or that concept of doing that, that I would show, I did a series of what if videos, as if, you know, what if this is true? What if the prophecies are real? What if the government just took everybody and blowed everything up and those kinds of things, you know, all these post-apocalyptic style and just little bits and clips and things, just different things that were possible. And the problem was I was putting enough information in there, and I did something in 2011 exposing everything from CERN to scalar technology with do weaponry and frequency weapons and all kinds of stuff that were really not on the wide plate for the majority. I was explaining things that were being done right under people's noses. With Fermilab and some of these other things where they were doing experiments and things that were spraying. Chemtrails was another big thing I was on. And anyway, in the midst of all that, I was talking to people from around the world. And so the videos were really going pretty good. And people would ask me different questions. And so that I would do little bits or little clips or tidbits just talking about scripture because somebody would ask a question, what about this or what about that? And so I was trying to help people find their way to God. And the whole time explaining to them that everything that they're hearing and seeing, whether it's in the political arena or geopolitical or governments that are around the world that are doing things that people just, and of course 9/11 was what became a part of that as well. And because of the things that I was exposing, I got visits. Literally, I had 2 black helicopters. Now, this ain't no joke. I was on the phone, and the phone I had was one of those flip phones, so I didn't have a camera on it. And I was talking to a guy in New Mexico, and we were discussing some of these things that I had already been warned about. I mean, I had people warn me. I had death threats, all kinds of stuff. And the whole point that fueled me. That made me go even stronger. That you threaten me, by gosh, I'll expose you and show you some more. And I was exposing sensitive information. And so I had these 2 black choppers come in. And hover. I thought they were going to land in my yard, or we were going to have troops coming out of the side because they were that low. I mean, they were just right here, and spotlighted me on the porch. They come right down in the middle, and I thought, man, they're going to land right here. And because of the way the trees were, they were hovering, and these things come out of nowhere. And then when they were there, and I was like, I'm hearing helicopters, dude. I'm telling you, I can hear them. And it's like, bam. I mean, literally a big giant spotlight, and I'm standing right here, and there's these 2 black choppers.
What the hell?
Yeah, no kidding. I'm thinking this is it, and I start hollering, "Bring me a camera, Brett!" My stupidity. Let's film it. They're going to shoot me. Let's film this, man. This is live. Let's do this. Let's get it on camera. And that was me. And so, needless to say, certain points were made to me. Certain things were made and happened, and then I was set up to experience some of the falls, and they tried to shut me up. I was threatened with imprisonment and all kinds of wonderful things, and they used people that were in government, that were family.
Now, were you like breaching any form of like a disclosure agreement or anything? Is that why? Is that what they were using for a reason?
No, I didn't breach any of my own disclosure agreements. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There was stuff I'm sure that was being breached. I was saying stuff, but I was doing it in a way that seemed fantasy or like a movie, or the different videos I did was in either comedic or drama. And so the stuff that was breached were not my own. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I was supposed to defend my country, foreign and domestic. And therefore, by telling the truth to my fellow countrymen, to me, that was serving my country. And therefore, some things that people didn't know about was put out there. And again, for the most part, I did it in a way where I was trying to tell people, hey, you should look into this. Don't take my word for anything. Check this out. And I would give different information bits that people could go and look at. And I've always done that. Just little tidbits that I throw out, and I figure people who are in the know or people who really want to grasp will go for it, and will check for themselves. And then I took a hiatus. I went away for about a year and had life, just normal stuff that you have to deal with, and back and forth. I've had one of those, those triangle things that people talk about, and they say it's UFOs and stuff that they have experience in. And they're TR. Oh, don't ask me the numbers, but it's a military aircraft, but it looks like the shape of a triangle. And I'd had a dream about one, along with some other stuff. And again, I still do those dreams, and I take them serious. But this dream had put me in a place where there was one hovering over me, and sure enough, it was just within that week I had one. We were out in the middle of nowhere, and one come over and was hovering over me, and I didn't have my camera. So, I never mentioned it. And this is the first I'm probably talking about it in a public arena, but it was one of those big triangle things. And it literally came down And I was watching it. I mean, it didn't come down on the ground, but it was probably maybe 75 foot in the air, maybe if that. Probably it was that low. I mean, it was big, and it came down and then it went back up and then it was just sort of staying there, and it sort of did this little thing as it's, I don't know if you see my hand, it was like this, and you're looking at it and it's sort of like just turning just ever so slowly, like it was just sort of and then it reset itself and then come up again and then went and flew away, and but it had moved with me. That was the thing. It was really weird because at first all you could see was this light. It was just a simple like an orb or a globe light. But then once it came down, because of the way the lighting was in the atmosphere, as far as the moonlight and starlight and all that, and it was right here. I mean, it was right here, dude. I could shine a flashlight on it. But sure enough, it was it was a pretty big deal, and that was leery because at first I'm thinking, well, and I've not really believed in aliens. I've never been that out there on that particular. I'm not doubting that there are things that we don't know about. Okay, I won't say there's not what people refer to as aliens, but I don't believe it's aliens. I believe it's demonic forces and things like that, or different heavenly hosts. I mean, we really don't know what all God's made. We can't even see the things in our naked eye that like the little bugs in your eyelashes that create sleepy. That's their excrement, and we just, oh, you got sleepy in your eyes. And we can't see that with our naked eye. So our frequency of sight and understanding is very limited. We can see this much out of the entirety. And so what is out there, I don't know what all God's made. But I do believe that a lot of what people are experiencing, where they talk about the alien concept and what they see with the grays and all these things, I think that is really the same stuff that Aleister Crowley was dealing with, and his was not aliens but demons. He literally was conjuring those things.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, that's just me, so yeah, I think that's, and if people really get into the research and really study, I think people will see that that's probably the truth.
Well, the part of the alien agenda, in my opinion, isn't just to push this endless godless universe, which we know is a huge part of it, right? And the whole space fantasy. But I think it's also to cover up the demons that they know have always been here and are going to present themselves maybe even more in these times. And then everybody will brush it off as aliens. And then they won't even look at, then again, you're still in the physical and you're not even looking at the spiritual aspect of the whole realm.
That's right. All. That's right. And that's the whole thing right there, is everybody's really hanging on to this. Now, I think this is where the effect probably came in to really help a lot of people understand that. But this physical, you've heard people that are spiritual or Christian or whatever, all of that throughout the ages, talk about how we're to walk in the spirit, not in the flesh, that this flesh is going away or back to the dust of the earth from whence it came. And that spirit, the ruach, the soul, the breath that you are, goes back to him that gave it. And so who you are, and we've had people with out of body experiences that give an understanding to this, near death experiences, people who have had all kinds of different experiences from all kinds of walks of life that give credence to what we're saying about that we are not this flesh. We are a spirit that dwells within inside of it. The flesh is the house of it's a prison house. And if people would read, this is another thing that's been kept from the public eye, is people say, well, the Bible is wrong, or the Bible has different things in it that really could be taken different ways and whatnot. But they're very limited with what they read, because you've got 66 books, interesting number they would choose to put in there, in the actual King James Bible. But if you look at the Ethiopian Bible, it has the book of Enoch. Or you look at the Bible that in the original King James includes what's called the Apocrypha, with the book of Maccabees and Jasher, and all these extra books, they're extracurricular books, we call them, that are still scripture, but were not put in or not canonized, as they call it, because they were kept from the public. The book of Enoch, you cannot believe the earth is what they say it is if you read the book of Enoch and believe the book of Enoch. It's impossible.
It's totally impossible, because it's very descriptive. It's very
much. And but that's a reason they didn't want that out there. They want to hide those books. And the first book of Adam and Eve, that tells you about how we really do exist and why everything is the way it is in the most part. We also have things that are given from the dark side too. emerald tablets of thought, the stuff that the Egyptians, all their religion was based upon these beings that came, these fallen, they were called the B'nai Elohim, which were the sons of God, the fallen angels that came down and knew the daughters of men, where the giants and the mighty men of renown came from. And when those were disembodied, we called Nephilim and became the demons we know today, the spirits, if you will, where people are possessed. And it's amazing the stuff you can get into, whether it's science and religion and all of those things, how they intermingle and are truth. And the experience that we have in this world, once we come to the knowledge that this flesh is not what it's about, or it's not about this environment, the stuff that's around us, a pair of sunglasses or your cell phone or whatever, all of it's just it's make believe.
It's all a distraction. It's all a distraction.
That's exactly right. And if you're distracted from knowing the truth, then you're going to be distracted from knowing the Creator. And why wouldn't you be? Why would you want to know God if you think you're a God yourself? If you think you've done it? And people really have come to the conclusion in their mind, oh, we're co-creators with God. Well, we probably are co-creators because he told us to go forth, multiply, and such. Be fruitful and multiply, right? To carry on that life force where two become one. You know, a male and a female come together and have a child and become one. And we've taken the absurdities that are in the world and made them into the fact. And we've taken the truth and the fact and buried it and called it absurd. And the fact that the majority of people only have a knowledge or a belief that there might be a God rather than that there is a creator, even though science itself now is proving that there is a creator. And then along comes this Mandela effect, the quantum effect, the changes. And all of that was prophesied thousands of years
That's what
ago.
did it for me. Like with the flat Earth stuff, like I said, see their agenda, their anti-God agenda, is what made me realize that they were definitely hiding that. I mean, it was very, very blatant. But until I really went through the Mandela effect hard, I didn't really grasp the supernatural aspect and the spirituality of this realm. Because once you see things supernaturally changing, things that are in your possession, I mean, there's no denying, you know. And I know you're going to get into the Bible changes as well, and that's probably huge for you, of course, because that's what that's your thing. But yeah, go ahead, continue. I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah, that was a big one for me. But sure enough, man, we all scripture again, and I refer to it a lot because that was something that we who have walked in that life or walked on that path and studied the ancient texts. And when I say text, I'm not talking just what's in your Bible, but I'm talking about all those extracurricular texts. The Book of Enoch, for instance, and Enoch is mentioned in the Bible. Solomon says in the Bible that to the making of many books there is no end. The Book of Kings and the Book of Chronicles that kept historical aspects of the kings and the kingdoms and the wars and things. All of those things talks about other books and names them, and those books can be read even today. They've been kept from the public, but certain aspects of those things give you an insight and an understanding to how you exist, how you work. You think about it, when they came out with DNA and understood DNA for the first time and how everything is made from that same thing, that adds credence to what we call string theory, where everything works on energy. It's all light. And when we grasp that, then you start to realize we're all interconnected, man, on a molecular world, on a molecular. And then this is where a lot of people, they either go one way or the other. Once they realize the interconnection, how that we're breathing the same air and the butterfly effect and all of these different things that take place throughout that. And again, I throw terms out there that because I figure people already understand that. But people take one of two routes. They either go in the idea that we are gods, that we are doing this ourselves, that it's a hive mind because we're all connected, or they go in the idea that there's a higher purpose to all of this. So you're going to take one of those two paths. You're either going to be self-absorbed and follow your own concept and try and rationalize everything from your perspective, or you'll look at it from the bigger picture and try and put yourself outside looking at it from the creator's perspective. If you can look at it from the creator's perspective, you start to understand and get understanding and leading in so many different avenues of life. Life becomes different. Just like those who have seen the Mandela effect or heard it with the different changes of songs or the site, just like the guy that was doing the video of the song you just had, showing all the different residue. And a lot of the residue that we had is not there now. And some of the greatest residue we have were the Bible changed things, because people that were into that were putting out statues and things, even though I don't think that's probably a good idea, but those are become residue. And just like the Lord's Prayer, almost everybody knows the Lord's Prayer just from going to a funeral home. You know what I'm saying? And people are taught that from childhood. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. But now it's not in any of the Bibles. And for a long time, even at the beginning of the changes, it was still in the Catholic Bible. Now it's not even in there.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is when you try and point these out to people, they'll be quick to get into, oh, it's a translation issue, this, that, the other thing. Now we know, hey, we can pull it off our own shelves and it's changed. But also, if you people would just pay attention, especially with the Bible changes, you see them incrementally seep across all of them. Like you can watch it happen.
Right. And some things changed it, like the wineskins was the big one for me. That's what really turned me on to this effect that proved there was something bigger going on. And that's when I realized the prophecies concerning this that are embedded around these changes that we're seeing. And again, some people say, well, it's not really even changes. And in a sense, it really isn't a change. It's literally a different timeline in the sense that time is divided. And what happened, what they're doing, and how it's happening, and all of that. Everybody's got different theoretical ideas. But if you come at it from the biblical aspect, from the prophecies that told you these were going to happen and told you how people would react, it tells you why, you start to get a better grasp and understanding of the bigger picture. And then it doesn't seem so scary or bizarre. It's almost expected. And, but for centuries, these prophecies were closed. They were sealed up because we didn't have an understanding. It's just like the first time that a person drove a car without horses. That's a prophecy. Horseless carriage kind of thing that they're running around here. And this is something that 100 years ago, we didn't have cars running around like that, and airplanes. My, how we've come a long way in such a short time, and knowledge abounds. And the smarter we get as humans, the dumber we get. When the greater the technology, the more we want to use it as a weapon. We want to population control and destroy humankind. And for those that are at the top that think they're gods, literally. And it's a sad thing too, because, people are just so far from the truth, and it hurts because all you want is for people to understand what's really happening. And because so many people have been programmed to rationalize, which you should be, you should try to rationalize. You should be very skeptical of everything. But the main number one thing is just like you said, the number one thing that they do in all of it leads back to the same, whether it's the quantum manipulation or Mandela effect, you want to call it, whatever, or the flat earth, round earth, where your realm is, what you exist on in your situation there, or your political and all, whatever the realm is, all of them try to hide the truth of God. That's a fact. They do bury that, because if they distract you from him, it's just like you and me, okay? If we're friends and we talk, and you and I do, we talk on occasion, and you got my personal phone number, and I've got yours. We've texted back and forth. Here we are. We have a developing a friendship, okay? But if you and I never speak to each other, that friendship's going to die. We'll grow old. We may be acquaintances eventually, but right now, we're developing a friendship where we listen to each other and we glean from each other. We may not agree on everything. We may not see eye to eye on everything. We may not understand as each other Um, but that's what friends are about. That's where
And
you come together and learn.
We're all together in this, that we're all
That's
going
right.
through this. We're all going through this. We're all going through all the lies that we're fed. We're all being oppressed by the same people. Who
That's
cares
right.
if we don't have the same damn theories? Especially when I just started looking at Mandela effect, flat Earth, these things in the last 4 or 5 years. Are we going to agree on everything? I mean, there's so many different ways to come at everything, and we've all been lied to so long. And plus, we all come from different perspectives.
That's exactly right.
I come from a media fakery background. You come from a biblical or a spiritual type of background. Of course, you're gonna have different perspectives, and hopefully, we can all lay the stuff on the table together and put pieces of the puzzle together.
And that's it. Don't you think that two minds are better than one in any
Yeah.
case? And if you've got experiences that you've had, and say Tom has experiences he's had, and I got experiences. The three of us come together, or we'll say Paul. We'll use Paul because I got a friend named Paul. You got a friend named Paul. So we got two Pauls in there. So say we have a round table with you and me and Paul and Tom and whoever, and they all come together and we sit down at the table and share. Now here's where the problem comes. Okay, you have two things that enter in because of the programming of our society. One is speculation. Okay, we can come together and all of us speculate together and say, okay, what if, or how about these kinds of things? We can do that. That's normal for humans to do that. That's how we learn, because we can come up with new ideas and have that enigma moment or that epiphany moment, and be like, yes, now it comes together. But if we didn't come together to start with, it wouldn't work. That's one thing. Okay, where we can have the ability to speculate. The problem with people coming together is that people will use speculation as their truth or as their fact.
Well,
And
that's why speculation. Me and Paul used to say this all the time, and I would say it on the show, because there's a lot of people in these so-called truth movements that used to, I had to leave all these Facebook groups and all these places because I would talk about things that are just too far out for them, but they always almost turned out to be true. But these people they just want to stay on no spin, no curve. Or they want to stay on, hey, there were no planes on this day, but they don't want to go any deeper than it. And then when I go deeper, it's always, oh, that's a psyop. That's a psyop. All these people that won't look. The thing with speculation is, if speculation is stated as such, it's a great thing. How else are we going to figure stuff out?
Right.
But you don't just throw, like, for instance, I tell people, like, in the flat earth discussions, like, let's just say me and Paul and a couple other people, we're having a show on my channel where we're trying to progress the conversation. Well, to progress, we speculate. But I wouldn't go into a debate with somebody that believes in a globe and put speculation out there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a balancing act. But
here's the thing, and it's just like that. I'm friends with people who believe the earth is round. I'm friends with people who believe it's flat. And I'm actually, believe it or not, friends with people who believe that it might be hollow. And some people that actually have the concept that it's just a realm rather than an actual physical place of that we understand as far as dimensions. Scripture even says God's creation's above measurement, man. We can't measure and find out all of his creation. It's impossible. So that right there gives us a heads up, I think. But here's the deal. If we assume something is real or true because you have an idea about it, or you've speculated, if you will, you've made a speculation, say, hey, this is my theory, and we're going to call it real, then you're no different than the science garbage that's teaching the theory of relativity or the theory of what is it? I mean, just pick one, the Big Bang theory or the theory of evolution. People have all these theories that they say is real, that is fact. As a matter of fact, the Big Bang now is considered more fact than it is theory, even though it's still a theory. Nobody's there. Nobody's been.
And I mean, being a guy like you that comes from a man of God, I mean, that must be really the biggest spit in the face. I mean,
well, not really, because I just look at it like, okay, well, maybe it was. Let's look at it. God said, "Let there be light," and Big Bang, there was. How do we know that God didn't create the Big Bang? Something started it, right? And then you have to ask yourself this, and this is the one that people seem to stop. Okay, let's say you go to the Big Bang. And what was the Big Bang? Where gases came together and collided and created some thermonuclear kind of fusion or explosion and started this mass growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that's the fact. Say we could actually go back and key into that major explosion. So here's the question: where did the gases come from?
Yeah.
What started it? It didn't start from nothing. Nothing comes from nothing. That's fact. That's science fact. Nothing comes from nothing. So what caused that explosion? Or where are the elemental aspects of it that began that? What started it? And where did they come from? And of course you'll have atheists will say, well, okay, let's look at it this way. If God did do all of that, if God created it that way, where did God come from? See what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's the same unending thing. Now here's the point. With science, even though science has its attributes, if it wasn't for science, we wouldn't have the medicine or the technologies and the things that we use. Science is not a bad thing necessarily. It's when science becomes a religion that it becomes a bad thing. And that's true with spiritualism or being a Christian or being godly or whatever. Anytime something becomes a religion, it's bad. Even Christ didn't like religion. He was throwing the religious leaders out of the temple there.
Well, religion has organized religions become just like mainstream science, working hand in hand to gatekeep our spirituality.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a say. And take your money. Also, don't forget that it's not just to defeat your spirituality or your understanding. A lot of it's just to fleece you, to take your money. But you look at the idea. Let me go back because I don't want to go too far off because we already rode a bicycle. But we're talking about speculation. Okay, that's one thing. You get people that come in and they speculate and speak it as truth without knowing. The second thing is that people will go from hearsay rather than from their own experience. If you're going to sit down at a table, me, you, and Paul and Tom and Mike and whoever, we sit at a table and have a discussion. And I come to you and I say like this, okay, I know there's a God. Why do I know it? Because I've experienced God. I've experienced an interaction with God. So that not a man has told me and not a book has told me, but a literal experience with him. Okay. Now that's truth. That's me speaking truth from my experience. There'll be another person that may sit at the table beside us and say they know God is real because, well, Photohelix said he knows God's real. Well, now it's hearsay. That's not proof.
No.
And so if a person says, I know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that God is real because Photohelix said that God is real, well, then that you're listening to a man, and then you're wrong. There's no proof in that. You can't do that. A person that says, I know that the earth is round because NASA said so, well, now that's not proof. Because you're listening to a man or an organization. And you can come to the point, not speculative again, but hearsay, where people will say, I know that it's round because you can look at the pictures. Even though the people who designed the pictures with CGI tells you there is no pictures of the earth. There's no real photograph of the earth, even though there could be. We can take photographs of the moon with a P900 and look at the crevices on the moon.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me the earth being the size it is compared to the moon, you can't stand on the moon and take a picture back at the earth?
Yeah.
And if we're only using P900, you're going to tell me that the imaging and the ability of photographics from a government level or a government standpoint isn't so much better?
Oh my God! And some of the excuses they use on their terrible photography, in quotations. I don't have my camera. Hang on, so people can see me. Some of the excuses they use on that terrible photography, because even though they do come out, people like Rob Simon will come out and tell you that all the Blue Marble pics are photoshopped, right? People still don't get it. They'll just put everything they call it an image, right? People see these images from these alleged satellites, assume that they're real pictures, but then they'll also throw out the excuse, oh, this was with like a 2 megapixel camera, dude. It's like some of the cameras they say they're using on these satellites that cost billions of dollars are cameras that would be on my Nokia flip phone from like 15 years ago. The cell phone you were talking about.
Did you see the Awakened Saint? He did a video. had to do with the hair gel or something. It
Yeah,
was
I watched it.
how they do the hairspray thing.
And he did the side by side with the commercial.
Right. If you do the gravity thing, right?
Yeah.
Or anti-gravity or whatever they call it, with the float or lightweight airplanes where they do that, almost like a roller coaster ride, and the hair will float and do different things.
Yeah.
Even in the water, it does the 0G. That's it. Even in the water, it does that same concept as it does in 0G. But yet they show you on this where it's supposed to be 0G and things floating around. The hair just stays there perfectly stiff and just moves around the same way. There's no flow. It's just perfectly stiff. And it's like, people really believe that. They buy that. It's almost such a Saturday Night Live episode in the face of the public. The things you can show.
Oh, these are the people that mock me. I mean, they mock me like I'm an idiot, and I try to be nice to them, and I want everybody to awaken to these things. And it's hard sometimes because I got people that believe there's a red convertible in space with a mannequin driving it with the top down, the impervious paint job, the tires are still inflated, and it just completed a lap around the sun. And these people laugh at me. It's like, who's the crazy ones here? Because I think the Earth isn't spinning because I've never felt motion, and every time I've ever seen a curve, it's been a fake picture. And I've been up on airplanes plenty of times.
I have a question. I have a question for you. Is the glove compartment on that car, is it made out of plastic or is it made out of steel?
I have no idea what it's made
Think-
out of.
think about this.
It's
If
allegedly road stock. He said he didn't do nothing to the car.
If it's a road stock vehicle, okay,
That's what he said.
Other than the exploding tires,
no modifications for space. They just
because
threw
the
it up
tires
there, dude.
would actually, with the oxygen that's in the tire and that rubber, they're probably going to collapse inward rather than exploding outward. They'd probably just suck them in if there's that kind of compression, as they say, in space. Again, this is their own words. So if there's that definitely it would decompress. Because it's just rubber tires and steel belts, I'm guessing. And then the plastic, if it's an open convertible, then everything that's in there is either going to suffer extreme cold or extreme heat. So one or the other. You can't have both in the same thing. So if it's cold or heat, it's going to cause that plastic to either break and literally crack. The whole thing would have ice all over it. If it's going to be cold, if it's going to be hot, then the plastic's probably going to melt. I mean, there's so many different things from what they say the temperatures are one way or the other, and the extremes. Part of the reason I think that they put extreme on anything is because it creates the concept that you, as a normal person, cannot experience that. You can't go to space because of the extreme temperatures or the extreme environment. You can't go to Antarctica because it's too extreme without the guidance of the government.
And the extreme, alleged extreme, everything alleged, okay? But with the extreme environment of space, right? They can use that as fear porn in a million different ways. They can go, there's going to be a hole in the ozone. Here comes an asteroid. The sun, this planet's coming too close. I mean, it's endless. And what's funny too is they use these fear events. They actually blame these on God. I've seen Neil deGrasse Tyson come out and say how imperfect of a place this is because all these things that could take us out. He starts off with an asteroid wiping and all this stuff that has nothing to do, but there's science fiction.
Well, I'll go one for you here. You talk about Neil deGrasse, and that guy's such a joke. He really is. But when you take people like him, okay, who his big thing is to be an atheist. You gotta talk against God, and then he'll turn right around and say, it's possible because of what they're finding out in science with coding and all of that, with AI and understanding the molecular realm and the quantum world, that it's feasible that the whole universe is literally an illusion or a simulation created on a computer by a 12-year-old in some basement somewhere. So in reality, that 12-year-old would be the creator of our year. If that were the case, he just admitted that there's a God, even if it's just a 12-year-old. You got to think about that. If our own scientists tell us that everything that we see is showing some creationism, and again, you can't believe the Mandela effect. If you really believe the Mandela effect and you're a truther, you know there's a God. Whether you think that God is an alien, because a lot of people want to go that route, because that makes them a little more free to do what they want, or whether you think God is some 12-year-old in a basement somewhere on another plane of existence, ultimately, there's a God. There is a creator. Because if you believe in the Mandela effect, or you've seen the effect and you see the changes and you have accepted the reality for what we see that it is, then it's impossible to accept that in the same breath as saying there's no God. It literally, you can't be, you may be agnostic at best. You may think, well, there's some sort of God. You may not have an understanding of who God is, or what God is. You may not have that comprehension, but you can't deny there's a God. You just can't do it. And the same with the flat earth thing. If you think you're on a flat earth and you accept that as the reality because of what you've read in ancient text or what you've seen from your own studies and research about flat or whatever, you can't accept that without acknowledging that there must be a creator. Because what happens with the flat is it puts the earth as the center, which is exactly what the creation story tells in the ancients, is that earth is the center, which puts you in the center in God's eye, that you're lined up, that you're here for a purpose and a reason, whatever that is. And once you start to understand that you're here for a purpose, there's something higher than us, that a God has made all of this for his purposes, then you have to question why you exist and what is your purpose, because you want to either know and fulfill and become what it is you're supposed to be, and maybe understand the next part of this chapter or the next chapter to this story, that there's an afterlife, and that maybe God made us as this is our trying ground, this is the prison house, that this flesh goes back and the soul goes to him, that there's a new beginning. All of these things come to the table. They have to, if you're going to believe that the Mandela effect's a real thing, because now we're saying that man can manipulate time, and scripture said that it would be given into their hands to do such. But what is the whole point of time manipulation? It speeds up the process, and yet it's turning back things as well. What we're seeing actually happen with the Mandela effect, I believe, and again, this is my speculation and my understanding from what I've experienced and from what I see. Doesn't mean it's a fact 100%. It just means it's my theoretical ideas. And I like to put that up front. Don't take my word for it, but look into it. Because I have, in my channel, when I first seen the Mandela effect, mine was about the wineskins. I had seen the changes in the store, and I just assumed it was like other companies just changing the name brand on things, or that I'd misunderstood, or that I misseen Berenstein and Berenstain. I got a daughter, so she gets to watch.
Yeah. But the beautiful thing with the Mandela effect is it hits every spectrum of life because it's so encompassing. So it resonates with you. Just like a woman that goes grocery shopping for her family every Saturday, she'd probably be the one to notice the grocery changes.
Exactly.
You got a Bible. I noticed Black Tom because I came from the 9/11 route, and that's how this whole thing works.
That's right. Everybody's got a wake-up call, and God is all encompassing, so that it says in the scripture, these days that was prophesied, it says that he would pour out his spirit upon all flesh, that your sons and daughters would prophesy, your young men would dream dreams, your old men would see visions. And we're seeing, or vice versa, your young men would see visions, your old men would dream dreams. All of these things that we're seeing as it's come to the table, whether you're seeing in Fruit Loops or Depends. Why did we have certain jokes that we used to make,
All the time, it depends. Your mama's so old, she has to wear Depends.
Yeah, exactly. It all depends, man. So here's the thing. When we see things that are iconic to us, whoever we are, and we see that changes, then we have to question our mind. That's part of the deception here. We question our own reality sometimes when we're seeing these things. And once we realize other people are seeing the exact same thing, it does create a dilemma, doesn't it?
Yes,
it creates the issue of whether we are okay or we're messed up.
Well,
Somebody's not
this
right.
is this is why and I get the alerts now on my phone. I subscribe to the alerts on Google. So anytime Mandela effect comes up in a news article or anything, I get an alert on my phone. And they're almost every day now. It's not to the level of like the flat Earth disinformation, all the NASA bullcrap, which is so much now. But it's about an article a day now. And every time, I mean, they're gonna try and paint it as false memory. We're misremembering. And the very important thing about that, people, is because again, that's to plant that doubt. So when you see, so if you notice that something physically changed in your house, that shows that the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, they just can't have that. There is no spiritual side as far as they're concerned when it relates to you. They don't want you to know about it. So that's why it's got to be misremembering. It's got to be false memory. That's,
See, and that's another thing. There is literally a battle that's taking place on a supernatural realm. It's the good versus evil. We'll put it that way. Okay, and it really is a dark supernatural battle. It is for our souls, and the problem is that people in the flesh, where they don't want to spiritualize, they don't realize that the powers that be are literally worshiping the fallen that was in the garden. They're worshiping Satan as God, and that he was the one that gave us the information and the intelligence and the wisdom and the knowledge of good and evil. And they've taken the truth of things that has been twisted into a lie, and they've made God out to be the bad guy in this day and age. And that's exactly what they've done. So they would rather you not believe in anything rather than to believe in God. If you're going to believe God, excuse me, if you're going to believe God, they want you to believe God is the fallen or the demons or Satan or Lucifer, however you want to say it. And in the ultimate outpouring of all of this information that is given to us, the idea is to distract us from a real relationship. And they do it through fear, because if you're afraid that you're going to be made fun of, well, then you'll stay away from God. What do people do? They're growing up. They make fun of the Christians or the holier than nows, and we have conspiracy theory terminology to apply.
Any thought outside the mainstream is any
Right.
critical thought is just frowned upon. It's like what I tell people. You're gonna get hit with the globe Earth disinfo, the 9/11 disinfo, but even on other topics that are conspiracy type topics, people don't even need to be hit with that much disinfo on it. But if you start speaking out against what the mainstream view is on any of these, they'll come at you. They'll get triggered, and they don't even know why, and they don't have anything to back up what they're saying.
That's right. That's right. And they do it because of the programming. And so when we see, as we're moving forward in the things of understanding as we go forward, a lot of the idea is now that people, because of the confusion that has been created, are questioning why they can see or why they can't. And here's something to always consider this, okay? If the government is labeling something as a possible terrorist threat, okay? Now this is preaching to the choir right here. But if you know that the number one terrorist threat in the last few years, of course, they've changed it up now because of flat earth concept, but the original was if you're ex-military, if you're a Christian, right-wing type, religious, what is the one, not Catholicism, but evangelical. If you're an evangelical Christian, if you're ex-military, and if you're a 9/11 truther or anything that's trying to speak truth to the people, that puts you in the top category as a possible terrorist threat. But you know yourself that you're not a terrorist threat, and so labeling has to be applied to that to not only create the concept that you're a threat to the people, so the people are afraid of you and want to distance themselves from you. You say flat earth, oh, he's a domestic terrorist, or he's a Mandela effect. That man's not thinking right. So they have to apply the label that you're misremembering, that you're a danger to yourself as well as to others, that you have a mental disability or disabling, that you need mental help, you need medicine, you need to be locked up, and all of these. and it grows and grows and grows to a snowball. And so that people are actually afraid of the truth because it's the truth that sets them free. And in the same respect, they don't want to be ridiculed, they don't want to be labeled, and they surely don't want to be locked up and put away. And that's exactly what we're seeing taking place. And that's happening. And people that are in the know, people that are in the know, and this may be dangerous because I don't know who all sees stuff, but ultimately, people that are in the know are very aware of a population reduction that's going on right below or right before your eyes. There are people. Well, look at the homeless populations in your own hometown. Look at where the people are that are homeless. Where are they? Look at the things that are happening in California. The ham radio law, so that you can't have ham radios to call out, and fires everywhere, mandatory evacuations, and fires that are burning the houses down and not leaving a thumbprint. I mean, literally taking out even porcelain bathtubs and things like that that are gone, just down to nothing. There's no debris. It's just a black spot, and yet the trees are fine. Why is that? How is that? What technology is actually being incorporated to make these things happen? And where's all the population? Where's the 50,000 people from the fire out there in what was that place? Paradise, California. Where's that 50,000 people? Where's the populations of the earth? If the Mandela effect is real, then there's 30,000 people in New York that can't be accounted for. There's another 30,000 in New Mexico, I believe it is.
30 million, you mean?
30 million that the population's wrong. So where is all of the population happening, and what's going on really right under your nose? Is there more things happening? I know there is. We know there is, but we're very limited to what we say, because if we come out, if we really did, those of us in the know, folks, this, if you don't get nothing else, get this. If we really told you what we all know, or what many of us know, we'd be dead tomorrow. And the channels would be gone, and the videos would be shut down. Now that's the truth. And just by making that statement alone is enough to get us dead. But there you go. You need to wake up. You need to realize that all the things that are going on around you, there is a God. That's true. You better make sure you know him. That's right. But there's a lot of things that are happening to remove you from this planet, or from this realm, or from this platform, whatever you want to call it, whatever you think. The ultimate goal is to have a population reduction to a certain number, to bring forth a world leader that runs over their world, their man-made world, the new world order, if you will. That's all real. That's all real. And things are getting ready to take place, because all those prophecies are going to fulfill, just like they have been. Just like with the quantum effect, the changing of time, the manipulating of time, all the islands moved out of their places, the dividing of times in the dividing of time. All of this is taking place right before your eyes. Matter manipulation, time manipulation, time reduction, time speeding up seemingly when they're trying to move it backwards. Your whole body seemingly changing because of it moving backwards. It's a crazy thing to wrap your mind around, the things that are taking place. This is called the time of lying signs and wonders. And now it says wonders and lying signs. It's even that's a change. But these are the times that we're foretold that we're going to experience, that we're going through now and getting ready. Because here's the big kick. This is the big one. It's because of all of the things that we've been able to see unfolding all the way throughout in prophetic clockwork, from the emergence of understanding of flat versus round, to the emergence of the Mandela or quantum changes or manipulation, to time itself being adjusted or rewritten, history rewrites, the Black Tom incident, all of these things that we're watching unfold right now. And the great lie that is NASA, your government, prosperity religions and gospels, all of these things to distract you from what's next on the platform. And you hear of politics and this guy's that way and this guy's that way or this woman's that way and vice versa and all of that to distract you from taking time to get to know the Creator. That's all true. That's all true. And ultimately, because those of us who have been watching the prophecies and because we've seen dreams fulfilling on a regular basis, or because we've seen the scriptures in certain avenues fulfilling on a regular basis, and because of those experiences, it's not speculation. We speculate because of the prophecy, sure, but because we have a sound program or a sound batting average, we'll say, then one of the next things that is going to take place, and the truther communities will probably tell you this, those that are in the know, military boots on the ground, people like that will tell you there's a war coming. A major war outbreak is going to take place. But people will say, oh, don't buy into that. That's all fear porn. Okay, go talk to the people that got bombed out in Syria or Iraq or any other country for that matter. Go look at the people in Libya. Go ask Gaddafi if it was all fear porn when they beat him in the streets. Think about it, folks. You're going to die eventually, whether it's in war or a car wreck. It doesn't matter how you go, but it matters where you go. And so that's the whole point as you come down through this, and I know I'm talking to the people. I don't even know if I really got into the point of how I came to be into the Mandela effect and that stuff. But before I was about trying to get the people to truth and to lead them to God, because, no matter what you think in this world, you are going to die. This breath goes away. That's a fact. That's reality. I just told Jerry, me and him was just talking about that last week, and now he's gone. It's just that simple. It happens. So everybody's got that appointment. And so my whole goal, Brian, has just been to really try and get people ready to meet their maker. That's all. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, you have to touch on certain avenues of truth that are so imperative for people, because you don't want nobody to believe a lie. That's one of my prayers is God, don't let me believe a lie and don't let me speak a lie.
And if you know the truth, you can't. How can you keep it in, man? If you're a good person, how can you keep it in? I can't keep it in, dude.
You can't, because
I care about everybody too much.
When you know something for a fact. Now, listen again. We know we have speculation. There's things that you and I can theorize about until we're blue in the face because we're not.
But it's still so easy to prove the stuff that everybody buys into is a complete lie and meant to manipulate.
If you can do process of elimination, you can eliminate even speculation, just like the NASA farce, because you can look at all of the lies that are instituted into it that are provable lies that they're pushing on the public. And then you can go from that to prove why they're doing it. Not just how, but why. And once you have grasped that concept that you're being lied to by the majority of people, even the preachers in pulpits are lying to you. They want your money. The government is lying to you because they just want control. The main behind the scenes are lying to you because they pretend they don't exist. Everything, almost everything, is a lie to such an extreme that you believe it's all a lie. And to where then you can't even exist and believe in love or a God that loves you. You can't believe in your brother or your sister, those around you. You'll have issue believing in things that I say or in things that Brian says, even though you experience some of those very same things. And yet people who see the changes still want to assume that they're doing it themselves, that we're manipulating our own reality when you didn't change Fruit Loops. You didn't have nothing to do with that. And it's not the hive mind trying to make Captain Crunch into Captain. Come on, really? It's a manipulation on a bigger scale, on a molecular level, because it's matter itself. You have to understand the makeup of how we work.